Welcome to episode 3 of our Bosbec instructional videos. We're now going to take a look at creating a workflow for collecting newsletter registrations. We'll do this with the help of forms and by creating units and groups. The function of the form will be to collect email addresses, create a unit, and then save it to a group that can be used for future messaging. We start by selecting and adding a form to our workflow. We'll start from scratch by clicking on Form. You'll see that the default contents are form title, a logo, and a few settings. Form title is what will be at the top of the form. We'll call it Registration to Newsletter. There are several additional settings here that can be used for allowing multiple answers, updatable answers, and more. While we test this new form, we'll activate multiple answers so that we can reuse it multiple times while testing. You even have the option to go in and edit thank you page if you'd like to customize the thank you message. For example, thank you for your reply. We'll leave "We will contact you." We'll go back to the form and click on Add Question. There are a variety of different question types. We'll be using free text since we want to collect the submitter's email address. But there are additional types like multiple choice and value scale. The first line of information is question name and is used to describe the specific forms and ties it to the incoming answers. Again, this is for internal reference only and not visible in the final form. Since we'll use this for collecting emails, we'll label it contact_email. Question text is the actual visual text that will be seen on the form. We'll write your email address. Description text is usually a short piece of text used to explain the purpose of the question. We've written, "We need your email address so that we can contact you." Grouping name is a way of keeping related questions together. For example, if you have several questions that are related. To do this correctly, it's important that you use the same grouping name on all of the related questions. In default value, we can add a static answer that appears every time. For example, right here. Or if you want to use dynamic data from the workflow, we can write brackets and key or whatever applicable information you want inserted. We even have Use Validation, where you can choose to restrict answers that don't meet a specific validation. For example, if you choose phone or email, that info will be checked to make sure that they are a valid phone and email address. We even have Regex Validation, where you can write in free text how you want the answers formatted. But we'll run with email validation since that's what we're looking to collect. We'll activate Is Required to make sure we don't receive any empty submissions. And if you wanted to remove the question, you can click on this trash can icon. We'll save our work here before continuing, and then go to the admin window, down to Resources, and select Forms. Here we can see that we've created a form with one path or containing one question. When you click on it, you can see a preview with options you've chosen for the form. Then we right-click on the form and choose Generate Form. We'll confirm this by clicking on Generate Form. You can see that a link was generated that we can use for testing the form. This is how the form looks that we just created. If we simply enter the word demo, we get an error message that says it isn't a valid email address. But if we enter an email address in the correct format, it accepts the entry. But in order for something to happen when this is submitted, we need it to trigger an action. So we'll go back to our workflow, close Form Builder, and add a trigger. Under the trigger options, we'll select Form Answer Trigger. We connect these two and save. Since the workflow is active, we can go back to the form and click Submit. Here is the thank you page that we formatted earlier. If we go back to the Workflow Builder, then up to View and Execution History, we see that we now have one processed action. Up here, we see that we've received one incoming message, but we don't have access to the answers and we haven't run any jobs. We click Stop Debugging in the upper right-hand corner and then add a job to the workspace and then search for Extract Data. We connect the trigger and job and choose Update Metadata with Form Answers. What that does is collect the form answers and uses the question name as the key and the actual answer as the value. Save. We go back to the form. Since we elected multiple when we created the form, we can simply reuse the form again. We write in the address demo@bosbec.com and submit. When we go back to the workflow, we see that a job was run, and we can even see the sender email address. So now we want to save this so that we can use it for future mailings. In order to do this, we need to save it to a unit. Units are what we use as a storage component. They can either be used as a recipient with contact information, in which case we refer to them as channel units, or you can simply use them for storing information, in which case we call them data units. We add a new job and we'll search for Find or Create Units. We add it to the workflow. Now we have the option of searching for an existing unit that already contains a specific phone number or email address, or we can simply create a new one. We have the new email address in our contact emails, so we select it by entering meta.contact_email, and then we'll click on Find Distinct for Email Address Only, since we're only interested in the email address and not a phone number. We'll save. Then we'll test it again by going back, filling in the email address again, and submitting it. Now when we go back to the menu and check under Units, we see that a new entry has been created with an email address. The unit, however, doesn't belong to a group yet, and we'd like to use it for future mailings. To do this, go into Groups and click on the plus sign. A new group is generated. Click on Create in the lower right-hand corner. Now we see the new group that we can use. If we go back to the workflow, we'll add a new job and choose Unit Operation. Connect it to the workflow. A few optional settings for this unit operation are where it can find the unit, if you want to filter, if you want to add an operation such as updating, other data, and where we want to save it. In this case, we're only interested in find and store, and remove the other options. Since Find or Create adds the email, when we look up at Legacy Resources, Temporary Group, there we'll see that it's created the unit with the email address we submitted. So if we select Find in Workflow Context and choose Get Temporary Group Units, then it will conduct a search for units in the temporary group. Under Store, we'll select Store in Group. Here we need a group ID. To find this, we go back to Groups, right-click on the group, select Group Settings, and it's up here in the right-hand corner. We'll copy and then paste it in. We'll even mark the checkbox Save to Account. We'll save our changes. Now we'll go back again and resubmit the form. We see here that the workflow was run. It added one unit from Workflow Context and added it to the newsletter group. If we go back to the Groups menu, we see that our newsletter group has one member and their email address. Now it's ready for a mailing. With that, the process is ready to go. Now all we have to do is generate a link by going into Forms. Click on it and select Generate Forms, and then click on Generate Form in the lower right corner. You can then use this link on a website or in an email. Once you've collected addresses, you can then send out emails to that group, such as a newsletter, with the help of other applications or by building a new workflow and adding the group. That's going to do it for this video. In the next episode, we'll be taking a look at building an API, as well as channels for sending to groups. We'll also be creating an API key and setting up a notification for when it's about to expire. We'll even take a look at building a workflow using the workflow library. Please visit bosbec.com to learn more about our company and services. There you can also find additional guides and tutorials, as well as contact alternatives for questions and technical support.